2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 197 of Fight Chat Friday. So this one we have a special guest, Mr. Luke Moriarty. He's here with us to try and boost his Instagram followers, so we have to get him on. So we're going to have a look at his fight from the Euros and the finals gala against Igor Valkov, a really tough fighter. We spotted Igor back at a seminar that we did, me and Adrian, in Norway, and he was somebody that stood out to us as somebody who was really top level back then. And that was something that came to fruition eventually, and he got to the final against Luke. So we might just get stuck into that in a second. But before, maybe, Luke, what were your thoughts on this fight coming into it? Obviously, you were aware of who he was and what strengths he brought to it.
Yeah, it's because I fought him in Finland, and I was aware of him before that as well. I think in Finland, both of us didn't fight our best. I think he might have maybe respected me a bit too much, and I wasn't up to it really. So this time it was the gala. I went up to him before, and I said that this time we can both put up our best performance, and we're in the gala, put on a show and show why we're there. I also said to him as well that if you don't punch, I won't kick.
But, no deal. No deal.
He didn't really take the offer, but thankfully. But yeah, I know he was a tough fighter, and I kind of know what he was like. A lot of them in the division are going to try and fight the same way against me, anyways. Like Ahmed has the same style, but he is strong. He's very strong. That's the first thing I noticed.
What's the strategy going out there against him? Obviously, you fought him before, so you know what to expect. Are you sticking to a similar game plan tactically?
Yeah. Like when I fight, I usually would stick to relatively similar game plan. Like I knew he was strong. Like his punches are strong. Not that he's just good with them, but he actually hits hard. So it wasn't so much about kind of flicking the leg and trying to get the headshot. A lot of it was more like keep it to the hip. That if he does try to hop it or come in, that my leg is strong, and that it's my foot that hits him and not my shin. Basically, if it was a tourniquet. So it was more just. You could say it's a bit more boring, but it's safe, just play it safe. My strengths are my kicking and
your strengths,
yeah.
Very good. So let's just get into it and see how that game plan played out for Luke.
Yeah.
So obviously we can see straight off the bat you have a nice little height advantage, and obviously that goes into your reach as well. So we're going to be expecting Luke obviously to get started with the legs. Something that we noticed though is he also has a really good strong sidekicks, probably similar style to Magomed, who was in a similar division previously from Norway. So they're similar kind of style fighters, aren't they?
Yeah. You can definitely see the similarities about them. Definitely both very strong, and like you wouldn't really say like they would have kicking that's world class, but when they hit you, you feel it. Everything's very strong.
Yeah, Adrian made a great point there earlier as well about your carries. Adrian, do you want to have a chat about that? Because I think this clip is at the start is where we see it a lot.
And we should see it just ahead here anyway as well, which is the idea that, one of the differences, and we'll see it when we come to the stats at the end, a lot of people have a lot of empty carries. So they lift the leg, they carry forward a little bit, the leg comes back down, and then they choose what to do. And very often it goes into an I go, you go kind of thing. Whereas for, if Luke's opponents are moving back from him, very often Luke's able to continue that carry until he can actually put a foot on there and make some contact. So it means there's not as much empty carries, and it means that there's a little bit more punishment if you don't actually react to the initial leg lift. There's going to be some contact at the end of it, and the leg just doesn't fall.
Can we go back a couple of seconds, Adrian? Maybe like 20, 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Luke, restarts is something that we've looked at a lot, and we see here that Igor on the restarts, obviously because he's a little bit closer than regular play, he's able to get to the hands 2 times in a row. Did you notice that at the time? Is there something that you were like saying, okay, I'm going to need to switch up this a little bit, or?
Well, because he'd hit not his foot, but I think his shin caught me a bit low the first time, and it was kind of my own fault. I wasn't really switched back on. I was still kind of feeling the effects, but like just looking back on it now, I think it was very obvious that I was going to come at him with my leg, and he caught me well there again. But it took me a while. It took me roughly, like we're nearly done the round, but it took me around this time, so just over a minute to kind of get a feel for him. He was moving a lot and pulling, but Um, yeah, it did kind of not make me respect it more, but it did kind of make me think about trying to be a bit more clever, and that I can't just come at him with a lazy front leg, you know.
Yeah, because that last restart there, I feel like your distance was that little bit further out, which is where you're more
Yeah,
comfortable. So maybe that was just a read that you needed to find your measure on the leg, I suppose.
yeah. Like it did take me a while to get used to it, because I knew what he was going to try and do, but like even here, like I had the back kick set
Each
up
shot.
Mm-hmm.
when I caught him when he got the last warning. Like I knew he was going to come at me with this, so like maybe I wasn't reacting to his tests as much because I kind of
Mm.
wanted him to come at me because I had the back kick set up. But yeah, it did make me just a bit more wary, you know, not to kind of get sucked in where he could just hop the leg like here.
Yeah, in one way, the fact that he was a little successful early in the round with going to hands kind of made him keen to go back to the well and try for it again. And that plays into, well, if you want it, you can come and get it, but now I'm ready for it. You know, there's a, yeah,
Yeah.
I have the answer. Did you start at some point to kind of figure out, look, there's a pattern to how he's blitzing me?
I kind of yeah, like I kind of knew like especially when he got the backhand, you know, like at the start of the first round. Um, I could kind of tell like the leg was going to come and then he comes,
Yeah,
or he does a test before and then he comes. So I was able to kind of pick up on the you could say the pre movement
yeah,
before the blitz.
the little tell.
Yeah, and like in the first round, I was able to slip his blitz, and after that, I kind of felt I had a good read on him. I think I caught him with a couple of defensive side kicks or another slip here.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
yeah, it
See,
was
it's
just
not.
getting that tell first. Sorry.
That's it. Like it's not just like a tell or a read either. Sure, it's not. It's almost like a feeling, and it's very hard to
Yeah,
explain it. It's like it's just a
yeah,
feel, and that's what distance is as well. You have the distance of the actual physical space between you, and then you have the distance of like the feeling that you have, and it's very hard to explain that as well to somebody who hasn't been in the ring and like understands that feeling.
yeah. That's actually a good way, especially with the back kick one. It just you know I didn't do anything for him to come at me. I just
Yeah.
felt there was 5 seconds left, and I knew he. I just yeah, I felt he was going to push, and
Yeah, 100%. But obviously, then as well, like you're trying to put your strengths to the forefront, and you do this really well in this fight. So it's not like you just like countered him the whole way through the fight. Because although we're talking about like your reads and what you're feeling here to be able to react to his shots, it's you putting your game plan to the forefront has got you 4-0 ahead as well, which is something that we shouldn't overlook.
yeah, you know, I know I caught him with a head kick at the start of the second round that really kind of put me up on the scores. Um, I knew as well, like I know I'm kind of a defensive enough fighter that if I do get a lead, that I do believe I can hold on to it. I don't think
Mm.
that a lot of people can kind of come back from 3 or 4 points down. So when I was looking at it at half time, like I look at the warnings and I look at the points and I kind of plan then the kind of the second round based off that. Um, but yeah, you know, I think it was just a one head kick, and then the rest of it were really just kind of timing a counter off of his blitzes, and um, yeah, I knew the more I scored or the more I went up in the fight, the more he had to push, so I
Yeah,
could
of
be a bit
course.
more defensive as well.
Yeah, what are the
But yeah,
emotions like here now? Is it right here?
um, relief to be honest.
Relief.
Um,
Okay.
obviously I was very happy, but I feel like I put a lot of pressure on it, especially after winning Romania and then even losing in Finland. I wanted to kind of show people that my previous wins or getting to the finals weren't luck, and that I'm actually a decent enough fighter.
Hey, all right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
That's good. That's good. And I have to say, you know, obviously, congratulations, Luke, and we've congratulated you before in person, all the rest. But then just to extend that to Igor as well, for, as you said at the beginning, Luke, putting on a bit of a show in a well fought final. And you know, when Igor ended up going 4-0 down, he didn't give up the ghost. He was still pushing and looking to make hay off of what he is very, very good at, and you know, that split timing, that blitz, and so on. And if he had managed to gain control of that distance and that timing, and bring the hands into play. I'm sure he could have got himself some points back in the board and made this a very, very close one. But you did concentrate very well all the way through the second round to preserve that distance and to make sure that you're always, able to put that space between you and him and extend or keep the range long so you could get the sidekick up there onto the hip.
Yeah.
The sidekick that you use, Luke, tell us about that. What's the considerations you have to make against different fighters with your chamber and stuff being so rangy with that leg? Do you have to change it for different types of people?
Yeah. So, like for me, I'd consider I'd have two sidekicks. I have like the sharp sidekick, which is kind of what I would throw a lot more on like the types of like Igor or Ahmed, where there is really no chamber. It just shoots up straight away. And like I think in my final against Yuka last year in Romania, I caught him a good few times because he tried to backhand me a couple of times, but there was no. I'd like to think there was no tell on the kick where the foot was just straight up. So even if I didn't hit him, I was hitting him on the arm because he couldn't react in time. And then I have the ones where, like if I'm sparring Shane in the club, he moves a lot, so I do have to carry and kind of push a bit more on the kick. So the ones that kind of move around more and not try to kind of counter my leg directly, there would be a bit more of a chamber or push, or like the ones you see after I carry my leg. And then I obviously have the sharp kicks then as well.
That one is nice as well when you carry, because a lot of time people think they have the measure of you on a carry, and then it was like the one that went viral on Techers where you have the leg up and then you kick them in the face before it even drops again. It's like a double kick without a drop. It always works when they feel like they just have the right timing and then bang.
Yeah, I know you covered it the last time in Romania against Ian. I think you called it the utility chamber.
Utility chamber, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I actually didn't think that was like no one really. I only found out myself. I did it after Romania, but for me, like there's two targets in Taekwondo. There's the hip, like right on the belt, and there's the head. And if you are kicking and you try to just disguise your kicks as best as you can, it's really a guessing game for them, and you have 50% of a chance of hitting them and they have 50% chance of avoiding it. And I think that's why I managed to get so many head kicks or side kicks, because I really just focus on those two targets. I don't focus on even like above the hip really.
Well, Adrian, that alludes to some of the stats that we're going to get stuck into next, because we can see that your contact rate is very, very high. It's the highest we've ever seen. So we'll have a look at that there now. Maybe Adrian will talk us through the stats on the individual shots.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting to see two guys sparring in a final and we end up with 7 and 8 shots chosen respectively. So obviously you've got Luke throwing in the back kick, having a go at Band-Aid on the way out of the ring, looking at the axe kick. So the difference being Igor threw obviously a few more blitzes. Luke didn't engage with that one, and Igor was also trying to beat the rise of the front leg with his backhand. He threw a couple more Band-Aids. He tried a 360, but 7 and 8 shots respectively is quite a lot. There's a lot of variety in there. In terms of the number of shots thrown, what we have, and this is not an inordinately high number. So as we watched it through, it didn't feel like it was a slow tempo fight, but there wasn't an awful lot of shots thrown. But I think it's the next one really that's maybe the most interesting, where we look at that contact rate. So for Luke, 70% contact rate, 43 attempts, 30 that made contact. That's definitely the highest contact rate that we've seen in the fights that we've covered so far. So that's efficiency. Like, there's not an awful lot of wasted effort. And I do think some part of that, at least, is the carries that don't go nowhere, as in, when the leg comes up, if the person reacts to it, Luke just carries, he carries and goes forward, and he'll keep the leg up there. And as you said, Luke, maybe it's a certain amount of, you're quite focused on reaching a target, when the leg comes up. And I don't know if there's anything else to add to that, but, even for a relatively low number of attempts at 43, that's still a contact every 8 seconds, which is tough from Igor's point of view there, I suppose.
Yeah, like generally when I'm sparring someone, I try to like I'm happy to sit. I'm happy to sit with them, and like I think the reason why this fight was like it was very slow uh, was I think because I was happy to sit with Igor. I knew that my shots, you could say, would be more efficient or more effective. Like the kicking is a lot more uh, successful than a blitz. I just have to hit him once, and then he has to hit me three times. Um, like I know that if I do need to up it, I would up it. But I think it did play into my hands that it was a slow fight. I don't think I'd have had made as much contact if it was a bit more, because obviously I'd have had to attempt a lot more techniques. Um, but yeah, it's looking at it now. It does look the contact rate. I actually didn't think I'd have hit him that many times. Obviously not scored, but made contact.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing for anyone who's looking or listening to this or watching from home. When we're talking about this contact rate, it's that, yeah, you picked up a shot and you hit the other person, whether it was the arm, it was a clash of the legs, or it actually went into a scoring position. But we've looked at a lot of fights, and we're looking at that contact rate as an indicator, particularly the number of contacts made as an indicator. With one exception so far, the person who makes the most contacts will end up the winner at the end of the day. So it is something to push for, to have a higher number of contacts. And if your work rate isn't going to be enormously high, like what we were seeing from Finn and Yassine, and those kind of crazy numbers, where you're talking about attempts up in the 70s and above, like, you want to be somewhat efficient with it. So there's no point in having 40 attempts and you only hit with 8 or 9 of them. That's not going to do you any good. You've actually got to make good use of those. So yeah, there's a hell of a lot of efficiency in that. And what it does mean is that yeah, go ahead, Richie.
Sorry, I was just going to say as well, Luke, when you hear your fight back with the volume on, you can hear your coach, Master Stephen Ryan. He keeps shouting to stay disciplined, and I think that, as you said there, Adrian, the efficiency obviously is something that you have to stay on top of to make sure, and then the numbers show the result in that. Obviously, you staying disciplined is you doing your job and making sure you're plucking away and making those contacts at the right moments to stop anyone to get past that distance that you can manage well. And obviously, that's a big part of you being in a successful position then as well.
Yeah, I know one thing he does in all my fights is, if ever there's a kick or I'm carrying that's not as fast or as strong as it could be, he calls it out every time. Every single time.
Okay.
Every time there's I'm floating the leg. I seen in a couple of my fights I tend to do that a good bit, but he'll call it out every time that I'll need to be stronger and faster and keep it sharp. So he definitely keeps us fighting for 4 minutes and not let us switch off.
Yeah, and it's very, very important to know what your triggers might be, or what your lapses might be. How does that look when it's just you expressing it out there? Because that same maybe drift in concentration or whatever it might be might look a little bit different for James or for Shane or for any of the girls or whatever it happened to be. But for you, if that's what it looks like, that the leg becomes a bit more floaty or a bit more ambiguous, and that's what you need to zone in on, then that's obviously a relationship and an understanding that you've built over years of working together. So yeah, really, really good to have.
Yeah, something that we've been looking at there recently as well, Luke, is the first in and the last in contact. Is that something that you have in your mindset every time there's a contact exchange, that you're trying to get that last shot in? Because we can see your last in contact here 10 times compared to Igor's 7.
It's not like when I'm in the fight. I think it was more just like when I'm training with James and Shane and them. We're always focused on, even when we go to hands, to flow, like to try and keep fighting in the spar, and then to finish with a kick. So like we almost do it kind of like the wacko way when we train. And you see me kind of suffocate the other person a lot, because that's probably from the last year and a half of James being a lot faster than I am, and me not wanting to get head kicked. So, but when we do train, like, there is no kind of break. We'll go in, we'll spar in close, we'll finish with a kick, and then we separate, and it's just continuing from there. So I think it's just more of, it's kind of just habit now, that when you're sparring, this is what happens. We're so used to it.
That's
Yeah,
almost better than the mindset, really, isn't it? Because it's just ingrained, and it's just what you do.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
we often say sometimes the worst thing you can have in training is that there's an ill-defined space, and that there's you can move anywhere at all in the hall, and there's no consequences to going to the edge. And sometimes it happens, it's a natural thing in a training hall. You find yourself standing by the wall, and you kind of wink at each other, and we take through 2 or 3 steps back away, and so it eventually becomes that people move towards the walls to get a break and come back in again. And you don't when you both agree, look, we're at a high level here, we only went to the wall because I chose to go to the wall, or I didn't make a better decision, there should be a penalty for that. So yeah, on we go.
Yeah, like one of the days we train in Master Ford's place.
Yeah,
it's basically 6x6, I think. So it's a very small ring that we train in, and it's obviously surrounded by a wall. We generally continue sparring, and we won't like push the other person into the wall, but it's we're on the last mat, we still spar. It's our job to
find
get
a way
out of there.
through.
It's like the last mat of a ring. It's our job to circle around and get into a better position to continue sparring. So I think that also helps as well, especially when you go then into a proper size taekwondo ring, and you have a lot more room.
Feel you can breathe a bit.
Yeah, because I definitely need to, especially against the lads. I definitely need more space,
the longer legs. But what we can see from these stats anyway then as well is that we have a good safety margin, 5.5 points of a safety margin on average across the cards. And that was like, Igor was scoring, it's just that it didn't quite come through in the end. That obviously he's lost 1 for the warnings, you've lost 3 I think off of it, between the warnings and the foul. So to maintain that 5.5 point margin, you're putting in some very big scores, which is good. But I think what was really interesting in watching it was that I'm used to seeing when you're running away with a match, it's the couple of head kicks that kind of put the big separation in there. But I think you did a lot of work this one, like you mentioned right at the very, very beginning, with some, maybe you might call it boring. I think there's a beauty and efficiency as well, like that that direct side kick to the hip, the spear through that keeps the person away. There's something very, very nice and visible about that as well. And I think you got some good return on that from the judges in this one.
Yeah, like when I'm in the ring, it's different than watching back, because even when I was watching this fight back, like there was a few where I would take a warning, but I think I'd score a sidekick. But and then looking at the fight back, none of the judges score it. So in my head, like I'm thinking I've gotten 2 points to take a warning, but and maybe the other person's thinking that as well. They've just been caught with a sidekick. But then when you look back, no one scored it. So I've basically just picked up a warning for nothing. So it's something I definitely want to work on. I kind of want to cut down on the warnings a lot the next time as well.
Okay.
Yeah, what we see here in your triad of control, these are just 3 areas that we think every fight has, that if you can get the better of, then you have a more chance of winning. So obviously the tempo intensity, you did pretty well there to manage it, like you said, to have a more lower intensity fight in terms of the tempo. That obviously favors your style then, so we give you the nod there. Ring control, there was a couple of exits of like you just said, but you were able to control it quite well in terms of using your leg as well at times to reverse position. And then that links in a lot with the distance battle as well. So being able to control all those 3 areas obviously gives you the nod, and then that ties into you getting the win and the scores on the board as well.
Yeah, and I think, you could look towards Igor and say, well, okay, he did force more exits from Luke, but I think what we're really looking for in the ring control there is, was he, are you able to spar where in the ring you need to be in order to do effective work? And very often Igor had to concede a side kick or concede a back kick, or take a risk to push Luke out. And I think, as Luke mentioned there, once or twice maybe the exit happened and there was no benefit in the scoreboard, but it only takes 2 or 3 with the 2 points for the kick on the exit, and then it's it's a whole other game at the end of that then.
Yeah, so Luke, one of the big things that we always get asked here is the tall versus small debate, and obviously you're somebody who has a lot of knowledge in that, and I know you've been on the other side of it as well, fighting the likes of Calanados and stuff like that, so that's more difficult. But Give us a quick little rundown of your do's and don'ts for the fighting a taller person, or if you're the taller person fighting someone smaller. So you said something earlier which struck a chord there. You said not reacting to Igor's test steps. Obviously, when that started happening at the beginning, everyone was test stepping and people were getting great success. Now people are more aware of it. They understand what it means. So any other kind of like tips and tricks that you have there for that tall versus small distance battle, trying to get through those different ranges?
So am I like as in I'm the taller
Either or.
person?
Either or.
Um,
For things that people do that annoy you, and then maybe tips and tricks that you have as the taller fighter.
I think like when I'm sparring someone smaller, a lot of it is has to be intensity. You need to bring more to the fight than I do because again my range is longer. Um, movement, there was a guy, Fionn, when I was younger. Whenever I sparred him, you know, he would be there, and then when I lift the leg, he's just at a different angle. Mightn't be further away, but just at a different angle. So creating angles, um, especially against a kicker, because I can't be moving my feet and kicking at the same time. So if you're basically staying with me, well then I can use my game plan. I can use my kicking, but if you're moving around more, testing more, basically being more intense, it's harder for me because I have to keep planting my feet. I have to keep, you know, preparing myself to kick basically. Um, yeah, so I think that would be for me the toughest thing if I'm fighting someone smaller is definitely um, the movement and intensity. Uh, for me on how to deal with smaller fighters, again, I keep a lot of it as sharp kicks. I try to take the space. So like I'd use a lot of sharp side kicks and then keep it to the center. Um, if they are a leggier, smaller fighter, well, I'll clash legs with them. I'll use my height, maybe my strength, and try and keep as close to the corner of the ring as possible. Because once they're in the corner, it's a lot harder for them to get out. If they're on the side, they still have movement, or they can go either side. The corner, it's a bit more trickier because no matter what side you go to, you're still coming into me. Um, so yeah, I think that would be my tips. A lot more, and keep them guessing. Don't throw the same thing. Like I was saying earlier on, it's all, the more you can make them, the more unpredictable you are, the less you'll actually have to do to score. And that would be my tip. Yeah.
Nice. Like that is the soundbite. The more unpredictable you are, the less you'll have to do to score. We're going to keep note of that one, Luke. That sounds good. You'll have to bring that up in the seminars.
I will.
All right, guys. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for coming on, Luke, and sharing your ideas and your thoughts. And congrats again on becoming European champ.
Well done,
Thank
Luke.
you. Thank you for having me.